All right, class. So this is the last of our series about how to write a good thesis paper. This is part 3, how to write the conclusion paragraph. So you've taken notes already about how to write an introduction and how to write a body paragraph. If you could take out like a notebook so you can take down some notes on how to write this last part, the conclusion paragraph, that would be great. We've been comparing writing the paper to a trial. So the introduction paragraph is like that part of the trial where you get up in front of the judge, you say your thesis that your client is innocent or guilty. The body paragraph is like the middle part of the trial where you present all the evidence. That's the most important part, the longest part. And then there's the conclusion paragraph that kind of repeats everything. Um, So obviously today we're focusing on the conclusion paragraph. The one thing that a lot of people find confusing about the conclusion is that it's all about repeating what you've said already. And because it's all repeating, some people are like, why do I do this at all? I've already said this already. Why do I have to say it again? And I think that's a valid point. But think about it this way. If you were charged with committing a crime and um, they had just, spent hours and hours arguing about whether you're innocent or guilty, and it's time for your lawyer to give his closing statement. And the judge says, "All right, you have one last chance to convince us. Do you want to remind us of anything about your client before the jury makes their decision?" And your lawyer stands up and looks at the jury and says, "Nope, I rest my case. I don't have anything else to say." You probably want all your money back from that lawyer because he had one last shot to convince the jury to side with him instead of the other lawyer, and he didn't take it. That's kind of what the conclusion is. It's your last chance to kind of remind everybody about all the smart things you said in the rest of the paper. So there are 5 steps to writing a conclusion, and the first one is to write your thesis, and then you want to summarize your entire first body paragraph in just like 1 or 2 sentences. You summarize your second body paragraph, you summarize your third body paragraph, and then you write something called a so what sentence. That's it. I'm going to go over kind of each of these steps in a little bit more detail, but those are the 5 steps of writing a good conclusion. Conclusion is usually one of the shorter paragraphs, so you can really accomplish a conclusion in 5 sentences. Five to 7 sentences, and I'm not really looking for a whole lot more than that. Your body paragraphs are your opportunity to go into detail. The conclusion's not for going into detail; it's just for reminding us. So the first step of the conclusion is to say your thesis again. Let's say that up in your introduction, you had said once upon a time, throughout the course of the book, Ponyboy, Miranda, and Richmond Everby prove that they are true heroes. So that's probably something like that written in, both at the top of your outline and at the last sentence of your introduction paragraph. The trick in the conclusion is you want to say something that means the same thing, but you want to say it differently than you did in your introduction. The reason for that is that repetition in a thesis paper is considered to be a little bit of a weakness, only because it shows kind of like a lack of flexibility in the way that you have to say things. And so the flip side of that is to show that you have a great flexibility in the way that you say things. You have a good vocabulary, you have a good understanding of sentence structure, and so you don't want to repeat yourself over and over and over again. So when you write a thesis in your conclusion, try to make it say the same thing as your thesis in the introduction, but try to make it say the same thing without being really repetitive. So here's another version of that exact same sentence. It says, "It might seem easy for some to dismiss a lot of these characters as worthless to society, but Ponyboy, Miranda, and Richmond Everby demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are incredibly heroic people." Same basic idea as the first thesis, but doesn't sound exactly the same, just so it's not repetitive. Step 2, summarize your first body paragraph. Over the course of your first body paragraph, which is at least 11 sentences long if it has all the right steps, if you are proving to me that Ponyboy is a hero, once upon a time you wrote your topic sentence, you spent at least 3 sentences and maybe more writing an REE proving that he's brave. You spent another 3 sentences or more proving that he was another heroic trait like smart. You spent at least three more sentences writing your third REE. Mine is about how Ponyboy is kind. And you had your wrap up sentence. So you have at least 11 sentences in your first body paragraph. What you want to do in the conclusion is repeat all of this, but just in one or two sentences. Here's how I would summarize my body paragraph in my conclusion. The youngest member of the gang, Ponyboy, demonstrates his heroic nature through his courage, intelligence, and kindness. The youngest member of the gang, Ponyboy, demonstrates his heroic nature through courage, intelligence, and kindness. You've already given your evidence. You've already given your explanation. You've gone into lots of detail up here. Down here, you're just reminding us of your main points. And the reason for that is, think about if you've written a 10-page paper and you've had many, many points. I mean, have you ever, been in class or something and so much information was thrown at you that by the time they got to the end of the information, you kind of forgot what some of the information at the beginning was? This is the same kind of idea here. You've given a lot of information to your reader, and so you might have said some really smart things up here, but right before they finished reading your paper, they forgot about them. So you just reminded in one sentence. Steps 3 and 4, same thing. Summarize your two other body paragraphs. Here is a good example of steps 2, 3, and 4 all together. All of my body paragraphs summarized in just one sentence apiece. Now, in this example right here, I summarize it by just naming the three character traits that I talked about in detail in my body paragraph. In this example, I'm talking more about it's an alternate way to do it, more about the kind of examples. The youngest member of the game, Ponyboy, demonstrates his heroic nature by saving lives, kind of an example of one heroic thing he does, showing potential to become more than just a street criminal, that's, referring to his intelligence, and making friendships with people who were formerly his enemies. He makes friends with Cherry and Randy. And so this is more of an example-based summary rather than a character trait based summary. They're both perfectly fine. Just some way to sum up the whole paragraph in about a sentence. This heroic nature must run in the family because his sister Miranda also proves that she's more than meets the eye. She discovers her inner power, saves Pony's life, and puts out the orphanage fire. Finally, Richmond Everby learns to use his money not just for his own selfish desires, but for the good of others as he adopts the Curtis family, starts an anti-bullying program in Tulsa, and ultimately ends the war between the Greasers and the Socs. Two of those characters, of course, are nonsense, but it gives you an idea of maybe what yours should look like, just substituting real characters for my fake ones. And that brings us to the final step of the conclusion, the so what sentence. The so what sentence should basically answer the question, what is the lesson the reader should take away from your paper or from the book that your paper is about? Right now, the reason you're writing a paper is because I've asked you to, because I'm giving you a grade for it. But later on, you might be writing a paper that is doing some serious government research or is for your boss or something like that. And people will be reading papers to gain brand new information that's never been really put together in that way before. The so what sentence really kind of brings that all together for the reader. What should we get out of this? What should we take away? How would the world be a better place if we really paid close attention to you? If we really paid close attention to Ponyboy and the people and the outsiders? How could we improve ourselves if we're listening to that? And in this case, this is just an example. I would say Ponyboy, Miranda, and Richmond teach the world that it's not who you're born, but what you do that counts. That's kind of an important message. Yours can be similar. Don't make it exactly the same. But it can also be a completely different answer to the question, what's the lesson the reader should take away from your paper?